We have 3 Thanksgiving games and a game on Friday. So yeah, we have a decent amount to be looking at here early on in the week. Now, starting off with tier 1, CMC, averaging 24 points per game, plays on Thanksgiving. There's nothing to talk about. You start Christian McCaffrey. Going down to tier 2, we will have Jonathan Taylor. And I know this is going to be a surprise to most people, right? Jonathan Taylor only averaging about 13.5 points so far this season. You can make an argument, well, Mason, way too early to be ranking him this high. I get it. I just want to stress to y'all that outside of Christian McCaffrey, it is very difficult to pencil in a running back 2 at this point. And if you look at Jonathan Taylor, right before the bye, he is playing 100% of the snaps, essentially. He's up there at 95%. And at the same time, you are seeing him get the 4 targets out of the backfield, at least what we've seen historically. Remember last year, this was the player that was being selected at the first overall pick in fantasy drafts. He's right back to that same workload. Going up against Tampa, you have a 22.5 point implied team total. So I'm not too worried about the offense either. Now, going down to our RB3 here, we are going to go with Travis Etienne. Now, with Etienne, maybe the usage was down just a bit this past week, but ultimately wasn't really a football game, right? I mean, they just blew the doors off this Tennessee Titans offense, so I'm not too concerned about seeing other running backs see snaps. What we've seen all season now is Etienne's going to dominate with volume. And yeah, he's averaging about 18 points per game. I mean, Taylor was my most drafted running back this year. Etienne was my 3rd most, so I am very biased. I have a lot invested into these guys. Alvin Kamara at one point was my most drafted player. That was before he rose in ADP, but nonetheless will come in here at 4. With Kamara, he has the receiving role, which you like, but I do want to reiterate, non-PPR format, not going to be nearly this high, right? The reason you have Alvin Kamara up here at 4, going up against Atlanta should be a fine offense, about a 21-point implied team total, and this is a running back that we can pencil in for at minimum 5 targets. I want to say 5 receptions, maybe a little aggressive. We'll go minimum 5 targets. Dropping down to our next tier, we will go with Austin Eckler at 5. Eckler, brutal matchup going up against the Baltimore Ravens. I didn't really draft Austin Eckler at all this year, but I thought once he had the Mike Williams injury, this guy was going to come out and crush. I thought he would see the same receiving role, if not a better one, than what you were getting with Alvin Kamara and being a better offense at the same time. While the offense has been great, the receiving role for Eckler is not nearly as consistent as what you would want to see. It is a very tough matchup against Baltimore. I will say Eckler is a little bit more matchup proof in theory if he can go out there and see 5 to 6 targets in a game. But as of now, it just simply has not been happening. I mean, offense should be fine. You have an implied team total about 21 points, just not elite. Now, going over to an offense that will not be fine, we'll be looking at Saquon Barkley. I mean, here you have a 15.5 point implied team total going up against the New England Patriots. But Saquon Barkley still averaging about 17 points per game. Saquon Barkley is still a running back that has the workload where you have to start him every single week, regardless of matchup. And yeah, the spread on this game is going to be a lot closer than what we have with most Giants games going forward, where maybe they can run the ball in the second half. Jahmyr Gibbs will be our next back at 7. With Jahmyr Gibbs, we had him ranked as that top 10 option last week. We're going to run it back. 19 points per game currently. This is back-to-back weeks now where we have seen Jahmyr Gibbs get involved inside the 5-yard line. Yes, Jahmyr Gibbs, I don't want to say is the goal line back. Obviously, David Montgomery still has a goal line role. But Jahmyr Gibbs will see touches at the goal line. We know that also he's penciled in to see 4 to 5 receptions each and every week. It's a great offense. You have a 27-point implied team total going up against the Packers. The man's averaging 19 points per game. I think he'd be super excited. Now, going over to Raheem Mostert. Mostert's actually up at 18.1 points per game. That's higher than Eckler. That's higher than Saquon Barkley. Going up against the Jets, you do only have a 25-point implied team total for Miami, which is one of the higher teams in the NFL this week. It's just not the 30 points that we saw last week, right? And it's just very difficult to rank Mostert right now where we don't know what you're going to get from Devon Achane. If Achane plays, I'd say Mostert will be lower than this in these rankings. If Achane misses, Mostert may be at the top of this tier. So I just want to rank him in a range where it kind of shows that you probably need to start him regardless, especially knowing that if Achane plays, I think we assume that he maybe has a smaller role than you'd usually expect, with this team being a little more conservative. Now, let's go over to our next tier. Let off with Bijan Robinson. Hook 'em horns, ladies and gentlemen. What I'm hoping here is I am hoping that you have a rookie bump coming out of a bye week. Historically speaking, that's what we're tend to seeing. You'll kind of see the team go into the bye and go, okay, how can we expand our rookie that's been producing in a more efficient clip than anybody else in this backfield? Now, of course, the hesitation is, well, you have Arthur Smith. Are we sure that he is going to be a guy that's willing to make that decision? David Montgomery will be in here at 10. Yeah, well, back-to-back weeks. Last week, we ranked both Detroit Lions running backs inside the top 10. We'll have him here again. I mean, going up against Green Bay, right now you are about 7.5-point favorites, so probably going to be able to run the ball consistently in the second half. Obviously, an elite-level offense, and Montgomery is averaging about 17 points per game. Rachaad White will be our next running back in year at 11. With Rachaad White, I mean, it's hard not to have him inside the top 12 at this point with his receiving role. Similar to what we're talking about with Gibbs, similar to what we're talking about with Eckler. This is a running back that you can pencil in 4 to 5 targets every single week at the minimum. Now, a little bit of a different situation with Rachaad White is that you don't necessarily have the same level offense that you have in Detroit. You don't have the same level offense that you have in Los Angeles. So it'd be difficult for me to go out there and rank Rachaad White at the same level of the tier 3 guys. Derrick Henry is a running back that is horrible. Obviously, I should not say that. Derrick Henry's situation is horrible, and Derrick Henry going forward in fantasy is not someone that you are typically excited about in the slightest, ladies and gentlemen. He's been bad all year. This is an offense that can't move the ball down the field. However, you're going up against the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers at this point looked to have the worst rush defense in the entire NFL if we remove the Denver Broncos 1 week against Miami. You have a 20.5-point implied team total for the Tennessee Titans, which is higher than what you're going to find with most weeks. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to make Derrick Henry a must-start running back this week based off of matchup. Keep in mind, he has been matchup dependent this season. Now, dropping down to our next tier, Tony Pollard only averaging 13 points per game, but the issue is similar to what we have every single week, right? This is a running back that right now is favored by 10, 11 points. 10, 11 points in this game against Washington. So I'm sitting here going, okay, well, at the end of the day, I mean, they're going to be running the ball in the second half. The Dallas Cowboys, at the time of this recording, have the highest implied team total of any team in the NFL, almost at 30 points. So there are going to be a ton of points to go around. And he's also going to get involved as a receiver. So even if I didn't really draft any Pollard, I still kind of stand by the fact this is a must-start guy going forward, ladies and gentlemen. You kind of have to put him there. Now, going over to DeAndre Swift, I don't want to talk about him too much. Going up against Buffalo, I'm recording this right before the Monday night game. So if DeAndre Swift goes out there and drops 30 points, DeAndre Swift may be someone that's a little bit higher than this. So please don't go down there and scream at me based off of something maybe happening. Now, going over to our next guy, we'll have Breece Hall at 15. No Zach Wilson going forward. Excited to see what this ends up meaning for this offense. In reality, I think that we can just say probably a bad offense, right? Probably not an offense that we want to be too excited about. Josh Jacobs at 16 is an interesting case of a player that I kind of would like to play. I mean, right now, if you look at his underdog pick'em, he's only at 61.5 rushing yards. So I think that it's hard to be super excited about this. I mean, if you really wanted to play Josh Jacobs, I would say go out there and just take the more than 61.5 rushing yards. I mean, personally, I don't necessarily think that is something that you need to do. Of course, if you wanted to, you can find that on Underdog Fantasy. Links in the description, links in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, you're going to get a 100% deposit match, plus our rest of season fantasy football rankings and tiers. And on top of that, a Christian McCaffrey special pick'em, more than less than half a total yard on Underdog Fantasy for Thanksgiving. And they're going to have a ton of Thanksgiving specials coming out, at least for what I've heard through the grapevine. I could be wrong. Please don't hold my feet to the fire. But going over to our next guy, I'll be looking at Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson, almost the exact opposite of Derrick Henry. I'd say Derrick Henry, we're ranking much higher this week than what we would do in the future. But here, no, we are going to be ranking Brian Robinson lower than where we will have him in the future. It is a very tough matchup going up against the Dallas Cowboys. This Dallas Cowboys defense is one of the best defenses in the NFL, and you only have an 18.5 point implied team total for Washington. So a little bit tough to be excited about them. But a team that only has about a 16.5 point implied team total is going to be the Cincinnati Bengals. So don't be super surprised when we have Joe Mixon down at 18, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, hard to be excited about Mixon with no Burrow. Hard to be excited about anybody in this offense with no Burrow. He'll still get consistent work. The issue is just the touchdown upside kind of goes out the window. Now, Devon Achane will be our next running back. With Achane, I have no idea what to expect. I mean, he would play on Friday if he is good to go. Going up against the Jets wouldn't be a great matchup. He's averaging like 20.5 points per game. I mean, I ranked him as a must-start option this past week because we were confident with him coming back, that he was stepping into a beautiful situation where the Dolphins had an implied team total of 30 points. It's just tougher with him coming back and playing 3 snaps getting injured. Now, if he comes back in, what does the workload actually look like? And I don't even know if he's going to play. Kyren Williams, I can't be guaranteed that he's going to play at this point. I will say this offense actually is supposed to be better going forward. You have almost a 23-point implied team total going up against the Cardinals here. With Kyren Williams, he's averaging about 18.5 points per game as well. So, I mean, overall, I'm in on Kyren if he plays, but we're really going to have to monitor the practice reports that we have through this week. Isaiah Pacheco will be that next guy. Don't want to talk about Pacheco. I will say good matchup against the Raiders. However, I just have not seen him play on Monday, so I'm assuming that this ranking will change. James Conner will be our next guy at 22. James Conner, seeing pretty much every single snap going up against the Rams. You are 1-point dog here. In reality, this is going to be a super, super close game, pretty much just to pick him. And yeah, I think you could start James Conner with confidence. And Devin Singletary is another running back that it's difficult to rank just because I have no idea what's going to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, if Dameon Pierce plays, then I think that we can assume Devin Singletary is probably the starting running back, but he's in a committee. If Dameon Pierce misses, you can assume that Devin Singletary is more exciting than this. But one thing to point out with Devin Singletary, even though I really am rooting for the guy because we got lucky to draft him in a lot of underdog leagues this year. I don't want to act like it was a smart thing. We got extremely lucky. But ultimately, he's not being involved as a receiver. So it is difficult to be too excited about him. Now, Alexander Mattison will be our next running back here. Mattison, great matchup going up against Chicago, but similar to this, Alexander Mattison not really getting involved as a receiver either. It's a good matchup against Chicago. You can start him. It's just tough given the fact that he's been so inefficient all year. And at the same time, this is someone that at the end of the day won't see a ton of targets with Joshua Dobbs willing to run the ball. Now, Zach Charbonnet will be coming in. Honestly, we'll move him up to 19. Charbonnet going up against the 49ers. It is a horrendous matchup. We are assuming that we have no Kenneth Walker. I want to have Zach Charbonnet higher than this. We don't know the status of Geno Smith. So if you're going to look at the implied team total here, right now you have an implied team total of about 17.5 points for Zach Charbonnet. This should be one of the worst offenses in the NFL this week. Charbonnet has the involvement as a receiver. He has the frame to be a 3-down back as well. So I want to come out here and I want to say, oh, let's fire him up as a top 12 running back. It's just tough not knowing the quarterback play. And on top of this, you are dealing with a situation where it's the worst matchup you could possibly ask for. Now, going over to Javonte Williams at 25. A really tough matchup for Javonte as well. I mean, maybe you want to have him a little bit higher than this, but you're going up against Cleveland while Jalen Warren did Jalen Warren things. I don't necessarily know how easy it is to be projecting that from the next best guy. You have an implied team total of 19 points. James Cook will be our next guy in here at 26. With Cook, keep on waiting for us to get Leonard Fournette in this offense, and it just simply never happens. I guess they signed Leonard Fournette legitimately just to be a practice squad guy at this point. Never thought Fournette was going to be the starter here. I thought he would be like a Damian Harris level player, though. Ramondre Stevenson will be our next guy in here at 27. I want to reiterate, Ramondre is a running back in a committee. Ramondre is one of the least efficient rushers in the NFL. And he's in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. So it is difficult to be too excited. And then I know everybody's going to be screaming at us going, Mason, you clown. How do you have Gus Edwards this low? And to be fair, Gus Edwards should probably be higher than this, ladies and gentlemen. My thing is just in a full PPR format, it is so difficult for me to get excited about someone that It's going to have no role as a receiver. Underdog had Gus Edwards pick him this past week at like 3.5 receiving yards. So if you're going to go out there, if you're going to continue to be at the very top of the NFL in rushing touchdowns, then yeah, of course you can be viable. It's just so hard to project that from any player, even if they're in a great offense. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to have Jaylen Warren. I would love to have Jaylen Warren higher than this. Yeah, Mike Tomlin coming out saying, oh no, Najee Harris is still going to have his same role. Najee Harris is still going to see a slightly more than 50% of the snaps in this backfield. So if I'm looking at Jaylen Warren, while Jaylen Warren's been phenomenal, ultimately, he is a running back in a situation that he's splitting the backfield 50-50, and at the same time, he's in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Khalil Herbert will be our next guy at 31. We're going to have to monitor the Deonta Foreman report. If Foreman does play, Khalil Herbert is not startable. If Foreman misses, you could go through and look to play Herbert. A.J. Dillon will be our next player at 32. You have an applied team total of about 19.5 points here for the Packers, so they're going to be a very bad team. While A.J. Dillon, in theory, should project out to be a better option than this, at least in my mind, the reality of the situation is I played this guy over and over again at the beginning of the season when you had no Aaron Jones, and he never did anything. Anything. Jerome Ford coming in at 33. Similar situation to Jaylen Warren, just worse in that with Jerome Ford, this is a running back that is in that 50-50 split in a bad offense, but not nearly as talented or nearly as efficient as what we've seen from Jaylen Warren. But I think that should be it for this video, ladies and gentlemen. I really hope that we are able to help you out in submitting your starting lineups this week. Of course, I'll keep you updated with all the injury updates that we have with these players. So just subscribe, hit that like button. And if you wanted to go through and say, Mason, you're way too low on Josh Jacobs, he's easily going to have more than 61.5 rushing. You can do that on Underdog Fantasy. Promo code FLOCK, link in the live chat description comment section. 100% deposit match code FLOCK and our rest of season rankings and tiers, plus a CMC special pick of more than less than half total yard, and maybe a few extra Thanksgiving special pick'ems as well. But I think that's all I have for you. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope we get to see you out in the live stream later tonight.